All right. Good morning, folks. So great to see you all. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Nia Wassink. I am Elena's campaign manager and so thrilled to be with you this morning for this fantastic virtual kickoff. We've got a really exciting campaign moving forward, and you're going to hear from some really fantastic folks about it. Feel free to keep your video muted just so that you can see our amazing panel of speakers. We'll be walking through all of the reasons that we should be electing Elaina this season shortly. Thanks so much to all of you for coming and also for sending in your questions. We've compiled those and we're going to be allowing Elaina to answer them. But if you have additional questions or things that just pop up, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll grab those over and pull them into the Q&A session later on. It's also great to see we've got some other elected officials who have joined us, lots and lots of community leaders, friends and family of Elaina. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We just so appreciate your presence this morning and excitement for the campaign. As we're going today, I'll make sure to introduce folks. But if you have any additional comments, please just drop them in the chat. We've got a large group today, so we're not going to be toggling between video and microphones for you all. Feel free to use that chat feature at the bottom. And with that, I'm going to open it up for our very first speaker. I'm so thrilled to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Shiquita Yarbrough, recently elected to Longmont City Council. And she's going to tell us a little bit about the importance of local elections and why she is also supporting Elaina. So Shiquita, it is all yours.
Yay! Happy Saturday, everyone. Thank you, Nia. I cannot start, anything without saying thank you to Nia. She is awesome, fantastic, the greatest campaign manager of all times. But then again, she's the only campaign manager I've ever had. So anyway, she's still awesome in my book. So I wanted to say that. I am so excited to be supporting this wonderful, powerful, compassionate, thoughtful woman for County Commissioner Elaina. She understands what it takes to build a strong, resilient community by creating bonds of trust and learning and respecting the community by treating each individual with dignity. With all of that responsibility comes great self-sacrifice, hard work, and most importantly, action. I know that Elaina will and has stood up for what is right by challenging power structures that support those systems that create injustices in our society. I believe she would treat people from all backgrounds with dignity and respect while recognizing the oppression that exists in our society. And she will attempt to mitigate its effects and equalize the power imbalance in our community. That is why we need to be intentional to vote in November for leaders like Elaina that will represent you and your interests. Local government is so important. This is the best way for your voices to be heard. I know that in the city of Longmont, I believe people felt like their voices would be heard, and that's why they voted for me. Local governments are responsible for your police department. So if that matters to you, think about that. Education systems, lower courts, and local infrastructures. You have the power to make change and to be the change. Vote for Elaina on purpose and with purpose for County Commissioner. You will be glad you did. Thank you, Elaina. I love you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shiquita. Really appreciate that. And yes, you are so right. This is all about ensuring that our local communities are really protected. So thank you for really highlighting that and for your continued service on Longmont City Council. Up next, I'm going to get my Zoom working properly and then tell you what's up next. There we go. Up next, we have amazing community leader, friend of mine and Elaina's, Chris Nelson, to tell you a little bit more about all of the great work Elaina does in this community. Chris, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Nia. aside from spending a Saturday morning on Zoom with some people that I care about and love and consider friends, and I'm privileged to consider them friends, I also feel excited about the opportunity here to have a county commissioner that will work to make the changes and represent the people of the district to have a healthier, more integrated community. And so I want to start by saying I have multiple connections with Elaina, and I've known Elaina for a number of years. And certainly one of those is through my work at Together. We have a lot of intersections. And so today I just want to be clear that while that is part of our history and how I know Elaina professionally, I'm not representing the organization. I'm speaking as a friend who knows Elena's soul and who she actually is. And so with that, I want to share that our daughters went to school together, and so we have these like intersections in our life where I've seen Elaina in every single context that there can be, in frustrating situations professionally, personally, in happy times and in good times. And one of the things that has me be here today to support Elaina and ask you to support Elaina is the awareness that she is steadfast. When she wants to see something happen, she engages every single stakeholder across every jurisdiction possible to ensure that the right thing is done. That includes compassion for people. It includes a tremendous ability to listen. I will talk, I think people know this about me, I will talk for hours. And I've spent time with Elaina where she doesn't get a word in edgewise, but then can sort of summarize the conversation. And so I know that she's capable of doing an amazing job as county commissioner because she hears what's going on, synthesizes it, looks at the larger picture of where those things can happen, how they can happen, and engaging people in understanding why they should happen. I know Elaina as a mom, as a professional, and as a friend, and I don't know very many people who are more kind and caring and compassionate than Elaina. And that is matched with a ferocity to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished. And I'll give a couple anecdotes. Obviously, in the work that we do at Together and have a lot of pathways that cross and work that we do together, it's about helping young people to find a place where they can thrive. And I get a call from Elaina once in a while, and I want to tell two very brief stories to just sort of paint a picture of what I mean when I say steadfast, ferocious, kind, and compassionate. Is I'll get a call from Elaina, like there's a really tough case with a young person that's wrapped up in the juvenile justice system in some way, and those calls always are focused through the lens of what is in the best interest of this young person. Elaina has showed up at a shelter on a Friday at 7 o'clock to make sure that young person felt safe showing up there. I don't think that she gets paid extra to do that, but I do know that she does it only with compassion and selflessness. I got a call from Elaina a few months ago, and this is just another example of what she does to make sure that the right thing is happening. There are some gaps in systems where young people fall through cracks and don't have safe places to be. And Elaina's like, hey, I want you to meet a friend of mine who is in Adams County and works also for that district attorney, and carves out time and brings Buck to have lunch with this person with no motivation to Elaina other than wanting to see change happen. And introduces me to this person and says, look, I got no skin in this game, but I want to make sure you two know each other to enhance the possibility of young people's future. Every single conversation, every interaction I've had with Elaina is consideration of what's best for the community. She can look at things from a very individual perspective and then immediately zoom out. And I don't know many people who possess those capabilities in such a way that they're consistently compassionate and thoughtful. So for all the reasons, Elaina, I'm a huge supporter of yours. I think that you will be one of the best additions to our local elected officials. And as county commissioner, I know that you will look out for the best interests of everybody. And so you have my full support in your campaign for this county commissioner seat. And I will be rooting for you, clapping for you, and supporting you in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So appreciate your words and all that you do in our community. Thank you. Our next speaker is a really special one because not only do they work closely with the county commissioner, so really understand what is needed to be successful, but they also work very closely with Elaina and know that she has what it takes. So with that, I would like to introduce and welcome up our district attorney, Michael Dougherty.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Nia, for that kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. I am so excited to strongly support Elaina Shively for County Commissioner. It's an important role at any point in time, but especially now. And as the district attorney, I've had the privilege, and it indeed has been a privilege, to work alongside Elaina for the past 4 years. So I've seen firsthand why she deserves all our support and why we need Elaina to be the next county commissioner for Boulder County. It is so great to see all of you on a Zoom on Saturday. And I knew coming into this conversation that it'd be hard to follow Shiquita, who's terrific, and Chris, who's amazing and dynamic, and connect with all of you over Zoom. So I was trying to think of ways to make this Zoom more lively for Elaina Shively. So I'm going to play a song for you entitled Feeling Lively for Shively. I actually can't play the saxophone. It's my son's, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, I actually can't play the flute. This is my daughter's flute. But thankfully, with Feeling Lively for Shively, here's the guitar that I've been holding in my hands many, many times over the past 15 years. But that's because it's my wife's and I carry it everywhere we go, on vacation and elsewhere. I can't play these instruments. I live in a very musically talented household and I'm the roadie. I provide security and shipping. But thankfully, when it comes to Elaina Shively, I don't need to spice up this Zoom call. She's the right person at the right time, folks. She is the right person at the right time. So what do I mean by that? Well, I want to ask all of you a question. You can put the answer in the chat if you want. I think Elaina would love to hear from you. It's a really important question for us to consider as we decide how strongly do we need to support Elaina Shively for County Commissioner. And here's the question. What's the most important issue or challenge that we face right now? What is the most important issue or challenge in your life right now? So take a moment and think it over. You can put it in the chat if you want, or you can just think about it to yourself. Now, I'm not a mind reader, but I bet many of you think there's just too much. There's a lot right now, and it's hard to pick just one. And that's why we need to elect true leaders with compassion, initiative, perspective, the ability to work well with others, while also, as Chris put it, fighting ferociously for what's right. Elaina has that true passion for public service and a commitment to Boulder County, and it's exactly what we need in our next county commissioner. I'll share with you folks that I had lunch yesterday with a former state legislator, and I have a lot of respect for this person, and they asked me what I thought could happen in 2024 with the presidential election. And he shared with me that he and his wife have thought about moving to Canada, depending on how the election results play out. And that really took me aback because he's someone who's been dedicated to community service for as long as I've known him. And he asked me if I ever thought about that. And I said, no, never, because I believe in humanity. I believe in us, and I will always work and fight to the bitter end with like-minded people. And I just believe in the future, and I'm excited for the future. And in part, as I said that, I thought about this call today and the opportunity to talk to all of you about Elaina Shively. Now, when I asked that question, and some of you have put some things in the chat, when I asked that question about what's the most important challenge, perhaps you actually had an answer. Perhaps you thought it's the pandemic, it's climate change, it's the management of our land and our open space, it's the fires, poverty, affordable housing and homelessness, equity for people who work in government and all the community members that we serve. So whether you're in the first group, where there's too many to name, or the second group, you've just identified the very things that Elaina Shively is going to be working on. And she's someone who's always going to work with integrity and fight with integrity. And then she's the kind of person that we need. And she's a longtime member of this community, as you know. She's a graduate of CU from undergrad. She worked on behalf of 4 people in Adams County as a public defender before starting with the Boulder District Attorney's Office. And I'm so grateful that Stan Garnett brought Elaina in 2015 to head up the restorative justice and diversion program, but also to do so much more, including leading criminal justice reform initiatives. She has the leadership qualities that we need right now, and the willingness to work with others, but also fight for what she believes in. I've seen it firsthand. She has the ability to tackle real world problems and work through them. So for example, when we talk about racism and equity, Elaina came into my office years ago and said, let's work to do a deep dive data analysis and identify where racial inequities exist in our justice system. Because as long as there's racism in the United States, we'll continue to see racial inequities in the justice system. So let's take that on as a challenge and make it happen. So because of Elaina, we're now partnering with the Vera Institute of Justice, doing that exact thing, a deep dive data analysis to identify those racial inequities and work with our staff and community partners to root them out. We've also had, as you all know, some real tragedies in Boulder County over the last year and a half, on top of the pandemic. I look to the community response and how individuals respond to those tragedies to remind myself who we are as people. That's why I'm so hopeful for the future. That's why I believe in the future. See how many people in the community respond to these things, especially Elaina. So in the face of each crisis that we've had, each tragedy that we've had, Elaina has responded and led the way. She's led the way by providing comfort and support and leadership to not just the district attorney's office, but our community as a whole. So King Supers, Elaina worked tirelessly with Buck to support victims, family members, and communities, and help stand up the Boulder Strong Resource Center and connect that out with the community as a whole. In response to the fires that we just suffered here in Boulder County, she did the exact same thing. No one has to ask her. And Chris, you're right, she doesn't get paid extra, but I appreciate you bringing that up and creating an issue for me. But she doesn't need to be told to do these things. She just wants to serve the community outside of her role as director of the Restorative Justice and Diversion Program, which is a full-time, important job. But the fires hit, and Elaina's out there right away, day one, helping at the Disaster Assistance Center with Buck. They were there all the time. They made such a difference. When I would go, I'd see them, and they'd be visiting with different people who had suffered terrible losses due to the fire. And these people are waiting to be helped by federal, state, and local partners who were there. And Elaina was going up to each one and talking to each one, because that's the compassion that she brings to the work she does. And when I mention the fires, I can't help but point out that we have Curtis Johnson on the call with us today. He's an outstanding candidate for sheriff. He works in the sheriff's office. Currently, he also suffered a terrible loss to the fire. So to Curtis, my heart continues to go out to you and your family, and I greatly appreciate the leadership that you brought and continue to bring in response to the fires. Elaina, in dealing with issues within the office, the district attorney's office, helped bring Buck in as a support dog, and he has made an amazing difference. And he goes around the office and he sits with victims, he goes to court. This is all because of Elaina. She thought it up, she got the grant to bring in Buck, she takes care of Buck, and I see firsthand the difference that Buck has in the lives of the people that we serve in Boulder County. Keep in mind that this is all on top of her full-time gig as the leader of Restorative Justice and Diversion. Because of Elaina and Erin and the amazing staff we have in Restorative Justice and Diversion, they've greatly expanded the program that's made a difference in the lives of so many people, the accused and victims alike, where we help people get back on the right track. And we break the failed cycle of going to jail over and over and over again. She's launched in-house programs through Restorative Justice and Diversion that are now a model to do presentations and to share materials, and for Elaina and Erin and others to help build up their programs and help them. We also have the only mental health diversion program in the entire state of Colorado. It's a program designed to help low-level offenders who are in the midst of a mental health crisis get the help they need instead of sitting in a jail cell, which is the last place someone should be who's in the midst of a mental health crisis. Elaina started and helps oversee the mental health diversion program. And again, it's the only one we have in the state of Colorado currently. But I'm so hopeful and excited for the future because of Elaina's work. There's now legislation being introduced that would help fund mental health diversion programs all around the state of Colorado. I had the opportunity to talk with the governor's office this week a couple times, and some really good, positive discussions in support of the governor's public safety package, which is an important step for the state of Colorado. And the governor's staff asked me, what innovative programs do we have in the Boulder DA's office that the governor should be aware of? And I talked about the mental health diversion program, which I just shared with you. I talked about our domestic violence acute response team, which is basically a rapid response team designed to help connect with domestic violence survivors and give them the support they need, connect them with treatment, and do the very best we can to secure justice in the case and make sure they're never harmed again. And also our bias and hate crimes initiative. And I was so surprised last night, very, very pleasantly surprised. I got an email from the governor's office saying he wants to come to the DA's office in the next few weeks to meet the organizers of these programs. The organizer of all of those programs is Elaina Shively. They're outside her area of work in some ways, certainly the Domestic Violence Acute Response Team and Bias and Hate Crimes Initiative. But Elaina has helped lead the way and pave the way for us to stand up these innovative programs that are designed to make the criminal justice system better. But she does so much more than just work in the criminal justice system. I see it through her work with the YWCA over the years, but also the work that she's done in response to the tragedies that have hit Boulder County. When I learned that Matt Jones was not going to be running for county commissioner this year, the first person I thought of was Elaina Shively. I picked up the phone and I said, I want us to keep working together for years to come. But I just want to let you know, I just heard about Matt Jones not running, and you're the first person that came to mind. You're the right person for this job, Elaina. And if you do it, you'll have my complete and strong support because you're exactly who we need in Boulder County. And I wasn't the only one calling her and the only one telling her she should do this. It was all of you, and it was her, because she wants to continue serving Boulder County and leading and making a difference. And I could tell you that although the district attorney's office is a state office, we maintain really strong working relationships with our county commissioners. And Claire Levy and Marta Lokamine are terrific. They're both amazing county commissioners. And I know from talking with them how important it is to them that that third seat be filled by someone who can collaborate, work through problems, make a real difference, and fight for what is right. Because the time is too important for anything less. Now, Elaina is somewhat outside the political establishment. So was I when I ran in 2018. So was Marta Lokamine when she won in 2020. We took a lot of help to get to where we were. It required a ton of help. Now it's Elena's time to work through all the obstacles and help make the leap, not just for her, but for all of us in making Boulder County a better place. If we help her and make her a stronger candidate, we also help make Boulder County an even better place to live. I am so excited to support you, Elaina, and I can't wait to see you win this thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate all of your support and willingness to help introduce Elaina. I could wax on about all the reasons I think she's great, but I think we're all ready to hear directly from the candidate herself. So without further ado, Elaina, please join us.
Hey, I was mostly nervous about whether I'd unmute at the right time. So thank you all for being here. And to Mia, thank you so much, Shiquita, Chris, and Michael. I am pretty overwhelmed right now with all of your kind words and honored by your support. And it's lovely to see everyone on this call. To Michael especially, I'm really so grateful for his presence in my life as both my boss, who lets me dream big and innovate, and as a mentor, professionally and personally. And all of the people you've heard from today are truly as kind and driven as they seem. What I've learned about Michael is that he's really good at storytelling. And part of what I know is because he has an incredible memory. So that's also meant as a warning, beware, Michael has an incredible memory. I was told today to start with stories of my own because people remember and connect with stories. And as a trial attorney, you tell the story of the case, and I loved that. But one of my challenges is that I don't have a great story recall. So I outsourced to my family and I said, what are some of my best stories? I have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and an amazing husband. And what I can tell you is it was unhelpful help. I won't be sharing those stories, but for those of you who don't know me, I promise I have the support of my immediate family. I have adorable kids, Elliot and Emery, they are 5 and 8, and an amazing husband, Lane, who's a nurse at Boulder Community Hospital. They do exist and they do support me, but I have exiled them and our 2 black labs to the basement, and they are Bodie and Buck, who Michael talked about. So who am I? My name is Elaina Shively. I grew up here up Sugarloaf Mountain in unincorporated Boulder County. My younger sister and my mom are on the call. Thank you both for being here. They didn't really have a choice, but my father is deceased. My wonderful in-laws I see on the screen as well. I have a lot of cousins and some of them are on the call, and those who aren't, I've taken note. But anyways, up Sugarloaf Mountain, we were no stranger to wildfire evacuations and fear of natural disaster. In fact, when I started kindergarten, it was right after the Black Tiger fire had burned our mountain and many homes surrounding us. It included the burning of my best childhood friend's home. And I was so excited to start school, but I started having separation anxiety. And I didn't want to be left in town at kindergarten at school while my mom, sister, dad, and pets were at our house in case of fire. So fire has always been in the backdrop of our family story. Another fire broke out the day we were spreading my Oma's ashes up Sugarloaf. Another burned down my mom's garage and car with all of our family Christmas ornaments and heirlooms and other items. And that day, the amazing firefighters miraculously saved her home, even though it got to her deck in 80-mile-an-hour winds. So I want to just take a moment to recognize the first responders and Curtis Johnson and others on the call. Later, my mom's house was damaged in the floods, and we learned through both of these experiences what it's like to be underinsured and the challenges of navigating FEMA and other supportive services. And I no way mean this to compare to what our community has recently experienced. I just think it's why I jump into action and want to be one of the helpers and work, because I'm feeling fortunate to be able to be the helper and not the recipient of the help. It's been a month since the fire, and all of those activities were well before it had crossed my mind to run for this race. But when I was approached to consider running, I realized that this is what I love. I love this community, and I want to continue to serve this community. My calling is truly to public service and service in this community, our community. I would say, though, that like many of you, since the election in 2016, I've had that inkling in the back of my mind of how do I best use my privilege and skills to do more and to stand up for what's right. My husband and I have been on the front lines of service and recovery as our idyllic community has been ravaged by disasters, COVID, mass shootings, climate disasters. And sadly, given our climate crisis, we will see more. So as commissioner, I'd work hard to ensure that we are meeting the immediate needs, addressing that long-term resilience and recovery, and developing modernized disaster notification systems and collaborative responses so that we're better prepared for things in the future. Things like having evacuation orders ready in Spanish, having evacuation zone pentagons that match the danger, not city lines, better texting and messaging so people are informed without creating mass hysteria that comes without information. We need more clarity and training on what cities do and what counties do, and to partner with neighboring counties. Everyone impacted by the fires are struggling, no doubt. Even folks with many resources are grossly underinsured and navigating codes, insurance, and itemized lists on top of their trauma. Let's be sure we're not missing our community members who may be undocumented, our renters, the mansions and trailer parks alike damaged by wind and smoke, and make sure that our supportive services are available and accessible to all in our community. This idyllic home is also not immune to challenges that predated and post-date the Marshall Fire and the Whittier apartment fires. Equity must be centered when we tackle these challenges, and human dignity and equity are the values that drive me. We have to do this at a county level and a collaborative level, taking into account different needs of different municipalities, but not driven by one populace of any one electorate. I went to law school because of my draw to social justice. I recognized early on some of my privilege and that my life circumstances were so different than others, including those of my mixed race cousins who experienced racism I didn't here in Boulder. I started as a public defender, a court-appointed attorney for people who couldn't afford their own attorney. And there was so much sadness in that job and so much need for reform. There are also some great stories, like an unhoused, delusional client I adored, who always mixed me up for his music producer and always asked me to drop beats with him, something I am not capable of. I had another client who wanted to thank me and dropped off a wild live baby bird at my office as a gift. That's how I got involved with some bird rescues. I left the public defender to join the district attorney's office to work more directly on system reform, understanding that prosecutors need to and should be part of reimagining the criminal system. I'm grateful to Michael for talking about some of my track record and implementing and collaborating, and I'm so grateful for his leadership in allowing us to really dive into these innovative and effective programs. The mental health diversion in our county co-responders models improve outcomes and improve and increase public safety. They reduce crime and they efficiently use resources. I'd work to continue as commissioner to decriminalize mental health and to expand access to much needed behavioral health programs and supports. All people should be treated with dignity while also being held accountable for their action. And criminal justice, health equity, and housing are so intertwined. We have a great housing first model in Boulder. However, we need to do more because we're still not able to serve most of our unhoused population. Too many barriers still exist, and that's for our unhoused community members, our neighbors frustrated by encampments near their homes. We need to do more to prevent future homelessness for the families that are one paycheck away from being unhoused, and now exasperated by the 2,000 plus families still displaced after these recent fires. Supporting workers' rights and living wages, health equity and access, housing accessibility, all will work together to keep our community stronger and safer. I'll also work to increase safety in our community by supporting smart gun control measures and improving training and support for our first responders. A measure of success will be trust, transparency, and whether all of our community members feel equally safe in our community. We must protect our beautiful county. I'll continue the fight against fracking, and as an outdoor enthusiast, preserve open space and expand trail connectedness. Climate action's an emergency and there's no planet B. I want my children to have a safe future, and I'll also weigh environmental justice so that we're ensuring that Boulder County is beautiful, healthy, and safe for all of our community members. I'm especially interested in honoring and cooperating with the original residents of this land, the Arapaho and other tribes, in partnering for environmental stewardship and opportunity and public land management. As commissioner, I'll work to support smart transportation, accessible, affordable housing, and energy solutions like solar utilization to meet the needs of our growing population, especially out east, while preserving the beauty of Boulder County. Implementing real change requires empathy and compassion, and I'm good at bringing people together and working with others. I loved hearing the stories that I'm a connector and partner, but not a pushover. My family knows this, but ultimately, I know that I'm not a subject matter expert in all of these areas, and nor can any one commissioner or candidate be. But I will listen, I will learn, I will work hard. I'll be courageous in standing up for equity to disrupt inequity, and I'll be courageous in making the tough decisions. I will continue to lead collaboratively, lifting other voices and with strong conviction for the values I've shared today. I appreciate all of you being here, especially on a Saturday morning. And thank you so much for letting me introduce myself. And let me know what questions you have in the chat, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elaina. So before we get her to start answering all your questions, I'm going to give us a little bit more context. I'm sure some of you are already saying, yes, I'm in, let's do this. And you're wondering where we go from here. So as Michael mentioned, Elaina is running for a recently open seat. The current incumbent, Matt Jones, has decided not to run for re-election and just announced last month. So we are running quickly to get everything up and running. The next step is really to ensure that Elaina gets on the primary ballot. And so to do that, we are going to be circulating petitions, which just means collecting signatures from folks in Boulder County. who are residents and registered here. We have to get at least 1,000 signatures so that she will then be on the ballot in June. We need a lot of volunteers to help with that. So if that is something you like to do, we'll hook you up. We've got a few ways we're going to do that, whether it's you going out, getting it from your friends, neighbors, colleagues, or we're actually going to have specific sites where we will be collecting petition signatures, and you can join us at one of those. We also need money. Funds are required to run a campaign like this. This is a county-wide race. Although Elaina will be representing District 3, which is the Lafayette, Louisville, Superior area, that's the requirement for her election, but the entire county is going to vote. And so that means we need help getting literature out, ensuring that we are able to have her at all the community events. So you can donate up to $1,250 in county commissioner races. In the chat is a link both to volunteer and donate. If you are interested in supporting, please click on one of those. Once we get her on that primary ballot in the next month and a half, which is wild for me to think about, you will see her on the Democratic primary ballot, which is due June 28th. So the other thing you can do is make sure to spread the word, make sure people get those ballots in, because the primary, especially in Boulder County, is incredibly important. If she does not win the primary, she will not be on the November ballot. So we got a lot of work to do from here to June 28th, and we would love you all to join us. With that, I'm going to invite Elaina back up because we got some questions. And please, if you have additional questions, please drop them in the chat. We will add them into the mix. But the first question that we got from one of our registrants prior to this, can you tell us a little bit about how you want to partner with the various cities and the city councils throughout the county?
It's a great question, and one I'm already working on. I'm trying to reach out and connect with different mayors, councils, board of trustees, and also with our neighboring counties. And that's going to be huge for a number of reasons. One, on transportation and thinking about things like the access from the Northwest Corridor into Denver, also around emergency management. And so one thing that commissioners can do is when we don't have the ability to create pieces of law, because it's really a municipality function, we can be the convener. So bring together the different municipalities and neighboring counties so that we can tackle some of these issues more regionally. So I see that as another opportunity to lead and work collaboratively and to be a leader. I think Boulder County, we hold ourselves up as leaders of some innovative programs, as being courageous against things like fracking. And so convening and leading would be the answer to that.
Wonderful, thanks so much. We got a number of questions, understandably, about affordable housing, but also around creating inclusive and diverse communities through that housing. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was speaking with a city councilor a couple of days ago, really about what it looks like to have strong communities within our county. And we know from science that actually that connectedness and that feeling of safety and inclusivity is a real scientifically shown to help reduce need for recovery in different types of disasters. And so it's not just something that saves lives, but it's also something that makes this community more welcoming and inclusive. And so always using an equity lens. And as we're talking about more creative and innovative ways to expand access to accessible and affordable housing, we need to work with the established neighborhoods as well. And so some of our guts might be to say things like, hey, we're in a neighborhood here, we don't want any development. But something like a coffee shop actually might connect you so much with your neighbors and really help to have some of that equity piece in mind. And so the way that we approach the issue, the way we work with existing neighbors, and when we frame it, that we all have a lot of values around respecting and collaborating. One thing that I would challenge people is that sometimes when our guts tell us that we don't like the idea of change or we don't want that in our neighborhood, sometimes I have to remind myself that sometimes we might be the ones that are benefiting from some kind of other oppression. And so thinking through, how does this impact others? And are we standing up for the voices that might not be the loudest? And so I would ask for that to be a place where equity is always centered, where we are keeping in mind that we want to preserve the beauty of Boulder County and the things that we all live here to take advantage of, and that we're convening so that all voices get heard.
Wonderful. Thanks, Elaina. This was a question that came up a few times. What do county commissioners do?
Okay, put
A
me
hard
on the
one.
spot a bit there. I'm going to have a steep learning curve in terms of what a county commissioner does, but I've been able to work with a number of different county agencies, departments, and with elected officials that work within the county structure. And so there are a number of different departments under the county commissioner's purview. They are managing the budget for all of those departments and then setting the tone for county policies. So there are policy groups, the county attorney, open space, working with the sheriff's office on not just on the public safety side and also on the jail side, the district attorney's office, housing and human services. And so kind of all of those agencies and working to have that strategic plan in driving the county's initiatives and policies. Please don't ask me to get too much more in depth on that one yet.
Lots to learn, most certainly. We got a couple questions about transportation and how to manage that better, but especially about the bicycle infrastructure. Can you say more about what that could look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done around cycling safety and making sure that our roads are safe. In the district attorney's office, that's certainly been an initiative in wanting to make sure that we are doing what we can to help support that. The county has a Vision Zero initiative that they're looking at how and when road deaths happen or different accidents. I also come from a family, well, actually more my in-laws who are on the call, of avid road cyclists. And so keeping them safe and able to use our roads safely is a priority. It's also an environmental priority because it cuts down on carbon emissions if we're able to have people use different forms of transportation. So that's something I'd be interested in.
Great, thank you. So you've mentioned a little bit about your commitment to environmental justice and continuing that work and your willingness to continue to learn. Are there any specific areas in terms of the environment that you're really passionate about or that you want to dive deeper in and learn more about?
We did not pre-prepare these questions, just so you all know. So I'm taking a minute to think about this. I consider myself an environmentalist, even though it's not the field I've been working in. And so one reason that Lane and I continue to live in Boulder County is our support network is here, as well as we love the outdoors. So we take advantage of the amazing open space that's been preserved. We use the trails. We walk our dogs. I want to continue to preserve what makes Boulder County beautiful. There are a number of issues that I want to learn more about. I think there's a lot to be considered on how we use our public lands, things like GMOs and other decisions around crops and agriculture, supporting our folks in agriculture, looking at water usage and soil health, how we can continue to sustain and support. I'm against fracking. I'm concerned. I want to make sure that existing wells are cleaned and cleaned well and safely, and that we feel good about the ways that those are done. So continuing to monitor air quality and those cleanup projects. And I would say thinking through achievable sustainability. We are past the moment of it being urgent. It is emergent, and we need to be acting now and leading so that I think that one thing we can do that Michael talked about is as being a model so that things can scale up and be used in other communities as well. So pushing the envelope on things like solar utilization, wind energy, and where we can make those changes, big and small changes. So we try to do some of the small changes here in our own home and big changes as a county.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Elaina. I am recognizing we are rounding the bend on our time here, and we know you all really spent some time this Saturday with us, which we so appreciate. Please know that Elaina is available for additional questions. If you didn't have a question today, or you want to dive a little bit deeper, please reach out. I'm going to drop her email into the chat so that you have a direct connection to her. And if you have additional ways that you want to get involved, please let us know. We've got a fast and furious campaign that we're running here, and we would so like to have you along for the ride. In the meantime, thank you so much. Thank you for jumping in today and hearing more from Elaina and the folks who are supporting her. We hope to hear from you and hope you will join the race with us.